Hi, Allie. Welcome to the Sisterhood.
Hi, friends. Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be here today.
Well, Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year to you both.
Are you just loving heading into 2022 in sunny California?
Yeah, I'm excited. Hopefully, we'll have some good adventures and get outside and enjoy it. Yeah.
So we first met you a couple of years ago when you came to the Open Door Sisterhood retreat. We got connected through our friend Kate Merrick, and that has been such a blessing. So just tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So, yeah, I live here in Santa Barbara County, North Santa Barbara, near the charming tourist town of Solvang. And I've been married to my husband, Paul, for about 14 years. We love being outside. We love surfing. We have a adorable golden retriever named Gidget, who's our constant companion. And my passion is helping teen girls and young women know their God-given value and really thrive and live spiritually, emotionally, and mentally healthy lives. I love writing. I have a book that just came out. The ministry and the book are both called Wonderfully Made. And yeah, so that's a little bit about me. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so great to see your journey, Allie, and to see just really how you've taken your personal experience and then turn that into your passion, really, in helping others and specifically helping young girls and women. So, can you just kind of go back a little bit to the beginning? When did you first start noticing? I mean, we're talking about mental health today because so many of us are experiencing a need for talking about it and learning about it and getting help, whether that's for ourselves or our children. And so, just talk to us a little bit about kind of the beginning of your journey.
Sure. Well, as a little girl, I was pretty feisty and confident and fearless. But around the age of 12, things really started to change for me. And I started to experience these uninvited feelings of overwhelming sadness, loneliness, unworthiness. And it really didn't add up. I hadn't experienced any childhood trauma. I had a great family, everything a girl could want. Those feelings continued throughout high school. On the outside, it looked like I was the girl who had it all together. I excelled in soccer and was a straight A student and part of the popular crowd at my all girls school. And no one suspected that I was really fighting this internal battle with what I now know was depression. My family didn't even know. At one point, maybe when I was a junior, I did see a therapist. So my parents did have an idea that I was struggling somewhat with my mental health, but this was all new to them. And what happened was 2 weeks after I graduated high school, I found myself in a deep and a dark and a debilitating depression. I was unable to eat, sleep, or talk. I was basically catatonic. My body was alive, but there was no life within me. I was admitted to the psychiatric hospital. I was put on antidepressants and sent home 3 days later for outpatient therapy as my friends were getting ready to go to college and partying. And on a gloomy June day, I grabbed my car keys from my home in Silicon Valley and I snuck out of the house and I set off with one destination in mind. And that was the Golden Gate Bridge with the intention to end my life by jumping off. I was in excruciating pain. I believed the lie that the world was better off without me in it, that the only way I could end the pain was by ending my life. I was really close to that bridge. I was driving somewhat recklessly. My tire hit a curb and I got a flat tire. And I remember sitting in that car, paralyzed, unsure what to do. And there was a knock on my window. And a silver haired, kind hearted man came to my rescue and asked if he could call for roadside assistance. And after not talking to anyone for over a month, I engaged in a real conversation with that man. And that gave me hope in my heart. And I turned around after my tire was fixed and went home to my family. I continued to struggle with my mental health. That fall, I tried to go to college all the way from California to the East Coast in Philadelphia. And I was so overwhelmed. I couldn't function. I stopped taking my medication. I came into a very scary and a very dark place, even worse than before. My dad had to fly out, had to come rescue me. And I was readmitted to the same hospital that fall for over 3 weeks. I actually watched the Twin Tower attacks in 2001 from the hospital. And the beautiful thing was Christians in my parents' home began praying for me. And I asked for a Bible in the hospital. And as I began to get better and to get treatment, I began to read it. And as I poured over the Gospels, I discovered that Jesus loved the broken and came to heal them and offer them love and belonging. And one day when we were escorted to the hospital chapel, as a woman sang Amazing Grace, I surrendered my life to Christ, and I've never been the same. I have struggled with my mental health since, but God has repeatedly taken all the broken pieces of my life and put them back together even more beautifully. And it's by God's grace today that I'm here, that I'm thriving, that through living a clean and a healthy lifestyle and with professional help, I am free from symptoms of mental illness. And I hope that my story will give other teen girls and young women and men really hope that they can get through it too. That, mental health conditions, I like to say, are not terminal conditions. They are often highly treatable. And so there's so much hope that is available.
Thank you, Allie, for being so vulnerable. I think a lot of women can either relate to being in that really dark place or can relate to the situation your parents were in of caring for somebody and not knowing what to do as they watch someone enter into places that they can't fix. Mm-hmm. What would you say was helpful to you as a young woman, as you were going through your darkest times? You had a stranger who had some kind of miraculous intervention, but people in your daily life, were there things that were helpful or things that you did, that you chose to do that were helpful for your own health?
Sure. Well, definitely along different parts of the journey, different people and different things that I have done have really helped me. I dedicated my book, Wonderfully Made, to my family. And in it, I said, thank you for fighting for me when I couldn't fight for myself. And sometimes mental illness can be so severe that the person suffering is really unable to function, unable to get through their day, and they need people in their lives. You could have someone listening right now, and maybe it's a mother for her daughter. She's fighting for her daughter because her daughter is so depressed that it's taken away the desire for her to live. So, what does that look like? It looks for like advocating for her, taking her to see doctors, counselors, educating oneself on the symptoms of mental illness, the warning signs, the treatment. So really fighting for someone when they're unable to fight for themselves. Something that was really special and a very turning point on my faith journey in the hospital was a man and my mom's coworker, and he wrote this beautiful prayer for me, and he hand wrote it, and I received it in the hospital. And just something about that written prayer just really spoke so profoundly to my soul, and God used that. And then there's many things as I began to receive the treatment that I needed through mostly medication, but also psychotherapy and counseling, and changing the way that I think. There have been many things that have helped me just rise above, lifestyle changes and many things that I do on a day-to-day basis that help me really fight for my own mental health.
Yeah, I like how you put that, to fight for your own mental health, that there's a really active part of that. Like some of it is, you get the right medication, but also there's a really active portion of your life that you are doing your part to fight for your health. And that's really, I think that's just a great message for us in the Healthy Way series, because in all of these areas, we have to fight for our health. I always say that if we're not intentionally moving forward, we're usually falling back. We're usually in all of these areas, we're kind of going more into chaos than we are into that intentionality. So I really appreciate that comment. Allie, as you look back and as your family looks back, do you, now knowing what you know, what are some signs maybe that you could have looked for earlier, or that your family could have looked for earlier, that maybe would have, again, like, everyone's story is their story, but maybe could have prevented that more catastrophic experience?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And it really makes me reflect a lot on my own life. I think it was good that I did go into counseling in my junior year. Unfortunately, the counselor that I saw did not understand mental illness. And he actually said, I don't even understand why someone would want to end their life. So I actually saw someone, but I didn't see the right therapist. So I say a good first step, if you suspect your teen, your child is grappling with any sort of mental health issue that is interfering with their ability to function and to live well, to see a counselor, to really research, check out the reviews. Obviously, like a Christian, a biblical counselor can be really helpful, but someone who understands like the physiology of mental illness, that it's an illness. It's not just a spiritual issue. It's a physiological issue as well. So getting that child, that loved one into counseling is an excellent first step. But do your research because you can't trust everyone, unfortunately. And then I think I probably would have benefited from medication at an earlier age. So I think those two things would have really helped me. I think some warning signs that my parents maybe missed was being really withdrawn and shutting down emotionally. I was functioning. I was doing well in soccer. I was doing well in school. I was showing up. There was in this internal battle that they were unable, not because of their fault, they just were unable to peel away and to see it. So I think to really ask very straightforward, intentional questions. Well, how are you really doing? Like, what are some of the thoughts that you're having? I was even having suicidal thoughts my junior, senior year of high school, but nobody knew. My parents didn't know. So I think those are just a few things. And then as a parent, really educating yourself on warning signs or for your loved one and warning signs too. So
I think with any topic, as parents, the more we talk about it, the more we normalize it and not put that stigma even within our own family system, that more likely it is that other people are going to talk about it too. So would you say it's helpful for parents to talk about their own mental health and their own struggles with their kids, or is that not a helpful approach for parents?
Well, I think it can definitely be helpful to do so, but to do so with wisdom. I love how you said to normalize the conversation, because this is a part of who we are. We're mind, body, spirit. And so to talk about our mental health should be a normal thing, because everyone has a degree of mental health. Everyone has mental health. You know,
Right.
some people have poor mental health, some people have excellent mental health, but we all have mental health. And so to normalize conversations about that, especially in light of what is going on in our world today, in light of COVID times and everything like that, to have these conversations. Is there anything you're anxious about, or what is worrying you? How are you sleeping? Are you able to fall asleep easily at night? Are you finding that you're wanting to withdraw and be alone, or are you seeking out connection? Just to kind of get a pulse on that. I think it can be helpful for sure for parents to normalize the conversations with their children and to talk about it, even their own experience. You know, if a mother experienced depression when she was younger, to maybe share that with her child. So in case they are going through it. So I think having these conversations can be really, really helpful.
Well, and I was thinking about, as you were saying that often some mental health issues are genetic. And so to even when you share that, you're helping educate then your child that even genetically, you may be a little bit predisposed to this. And so let's talk about that, because if you're having these feelings, and it almost helps them to not see it as their fault, which I also think is helpful, because I think a lot of times teenagers just automatically think, well, this is my fault, whatever it is. So that's maybe just another point to ponder. You brought something up that I thought was interesting when you were talking about faith a minute ago. And I think as we talk about this topic of mental health and faith, it can be confusing, because I think there's a narrative out there that says, well, God can completely heal you of your depression, anxiety, whatever your mental health issue is, that God can completely heal you. And I even hear that in your own story, that there was some parts of healing that happened there, but it wasn't the whole story of that. So can you speak a little bit to the relationship between faith and mental health, and maybe how some of the messages out there are misleading, and maybe we just need a little bit of a more holistic approach?
Sure. Well, I'll share one story from my life where I was very misunderstood within the church community. I was at a large church in Southern California and was speaking with the pastor's wife, and she was interested in having me speak to the teen girls at their church, because that's what I do. And within ministry is work with young women. And she knew that I had battled depression, and she asked if I took medication. And I said, yes, I do. And matter of factly, she said, well, that can be fixed by your diet. And she had no idea what I had been through, that I would have done anything. Give me any plan, any program besides medication, I'll do it. And that just wasn't the story that God had for me. And so, although the exact cause of most mental illnesses is really not known, it has become clear through research that there are many, many factors, and it's often a combination of biological, psychological, and environmental factors. Krista, you mentioned the biological factor. So there's very much a genetic predisposition that many people have. That's very true in my family. I look back on my mom's side, I have relatives that have really struggled with their mental health. There's for sure a genetic component there for me. And that's mostly my story. But for someone else, it could be environmental. It could be a major life stressor, such as a divorce or losing a loved one, or it's very complex. And I say that our mental health is like an onion with many, many layers. And there's biological, there's, that includes like hormonal, there's, physiological, spiritual, relational, stressors, all of these layers, and they're all kind of interconnected, and every layer of our mental health needs to be tended to and nurtured in order for us to have good mental health. And so I think any sort of misunderstanding within the faith community or within the church or elsewhere really has come from a lack of understanding and a lack of education on what mental illness really is and the causes of it. And so while I definitely believe there can be a very spiritual root or not cause, but component to mental illness, it's really a physiological issue, and there's so much at play, and it's different for each person. And people can experience mild symptoms of mental illness, moderate symptoms, or severe symptoms. And so I think we have come a long way within the faith community. I mean, I hear people having more conversations all the time, pastors coming forward, sharing their story about struggling with an anxiety disorder, or ministry leaders. I mean, we've come a long ways, but there is still a stigma out there. There still is misunderstanding. And I think part of that is because, you think of an X-ray, it can identify the exact point of a fracture on a broken bone, but without brain SPECT imaging or brain scans, which are so expensive and difficult to do, we cannot see the physiology of an unwell brain. And so unfortunately, that can lead people to make poor conclusions, to think it's a character problem, or they don't have enough faith. Maybe they're not even really a Christian. I don't see the fruit in their life. And so I think by just having conversations like we are today, by hearing other people's stories, one woman who's really impacted my life, she's been a guest on our podcast, is Sheila Walsh. She was a host of the 700 Club. And one day she was hosting, she was admitted to the psychiatric hospital for depression. And she is a brave voice within the faith community. And there are many, many others. So I'm really hopeful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's so much that you just said there, Allie, but one thing I want to point out is that it is different for every person. And that makes it hard because we are people who like to label, compartmentalize, give easy answers with easy and quick solutions. And what you're saying is this is complex, and people work with their physicians, work with their counselors to figure out what is going to be the best short-term and long-term plan for them. And we, as people on the sidelines, shouldn't be kind of that sideline quarterback offering advice when we don't know what we're talking about. I mean, we don't, I think we can learn. And so what we're trying to do is learn, how can we best support people, or how can we best identify things in our own life that may be bigger than just a lifestyle change, or though those things can help in offering some daily structure. And as you mentioned in your own life, you have a number of things that you do on a daily basis that help you, but it's not the full picture. It's part of the solution. Mm-hmm. So I really want to emphasize that it is complex, and God understands it. And that's the other component, is God understands what's going on in the places and spaces that we can't see and we don't understand. And so that's comforting to me. I don't know if that's comforting to everyone listening, but it is comforting to me to know that as we step forward in these places, and we have in our own family, I mean, my husband has been okay with me sharing that he has struggled with depression. And as we have come up with a plan at different phases, it has helped me to know God is going before us. He's with us in it. This is not a surprise to him, that we can walk in this knowing that we're not alone. And it can feel so lonely and so isolating. Mm-hmm. And so I just hope that is a helpful reminder to women too, that this is not a surprise to God, whether it's your child or you. And he understands pain, and he understands unique forms of pain that we don't. So we can trust him in that.
Mhm.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, Alex. And I also was thinking as you were talking, this whole idea that it's not the end of the story, so to speak, that God is in it. He is with us. He has not left us, to quote you, because that's something that you say a lot. He has not left us, and that he will see us through it. And, we talk about a lot. The only way through is through sometimes, most of the time, pretty much all the time. And that God will walk with us in the through. And that may be a long journey through, but he's with us in it. And that makes all the difference.
Mhm.
So, Allie, I guess coming back to a little bit of your journey and what the through has looked like for you, tell us about that road, that the only way through is through. What has that through road looked like for you? And how have you learned to walk that with God and with others?
Yeah, it's been a challenging road. I have had multiple hospitalizations when I was 18, 21, and once in my 30s. And it has been very humbling. And, but yet, it has been the story that God has had for my life. And I like to think of a piece of kintsugi pottery, and where this potter takes a piece of pottery that has been broken and shattered into many, many different pieces. And instead of throwing those pieces away or despising it because of its breakage, the potter takes all of those pieces and mends them together, and often using a gold or silver lacquer. This new piece of pottery is even more beautiful and resilient than it was before the breakage. And I actually have an example of a piece of kintsugi pottery if you're watching online. But I've seen God do that in my life. Like because of my condition, have come apart. Stressors in my life have happened. It's made me unwell. Things have gone out of balance, and I've had an episode. And here are all my pieces, and they're broken and they're shattered, and my life is in shambles, and I have nothing good to offer. But yet God, in his rich mercy and loving kindness, takes those pieces, and with time and with the right treatment, with finding the right medication, with counseling appointments, with the renewing of my mind, through positive lifestyle changes, begins to mend me together. And I pray for mercy every day. Literally every day I ask the Lord, like, please preserve my mental health, and I try to do everything that I can to stay well and to be well. And when you've been so unwell and so broken, and God has carried you through the other side, like, you don't want to go back. And so for me, I'm highly motivated to do all that I can to stay well and to be well. And Krista, you talked about this. I think of I talked about having agency over our health. And so the good news with mental health is, like I said, it's not a terminal illness. It can often be a very treatable illness. And there's so much we can do and cooperate with God and to have greater health. And so I think of the man at the pool of Bethesda, and Jesus asked him, do you want to be made well? And it comes down to the faith and to the desire. And are we willing to make sacrifices? I have had to make a lot of sacrifices in my life and had to say no to a lot of things. Traveling internationally, like all sorts of things that I know just trigger me and bring different stresses in order to be well. And so it has been a very hard journey for me, but also for my family, for my husband, for my amazing parents. They've all supported me just in amazing ways through my journey. And it's just, I look back and I just see God's grace, and he hasn't wasted my pain. He's brought purpose into my pain. And I've been able to mentor young women who are in the midst of a mental health crisis, and have been able to talk with their family. And so God hasn't wasted this. This has been a part of his plan, and God can do beautiful things with a broken life. So just know that your struggle is not your identity, and this darkness is not the end of your story.
Yeah, it's so good, Allie. And such a message of hope, I think, for people who are just caught in that place of fear, because I think mental illness causes so much fear, strikes fear in the heart, in that deep place in the heart of whether it's yourself or parents who are thinking, oh my gosh, what does this mean? What does this mean for my life or for my child's life? And I feel like that's just so hopeful and helpful. I know you have a lot of resources. Where can people find those? And what would you say have been the most helpful resources for you, whether that's books or podcasts or people that you listen to?
Sure. Yeah. Well, the ministry I oversee for teen girls and young women, and really the women who love them, is called Wonderfully Made. And our website is just wonderfullymade.org. And you can find articles and films and info about my book and resources there. For me, I think I mentioned Sheila Walsh because she was very instrumental. She was the first Christian that I had ever heard speak about having a mental health condition and really push back against the stigma and against the shame. So her memoir, honestly, was really just a healing balm to me. To hear other people's stories has helped me so much. I'm very passionate about wellness and living about how can I live well, be well. And so health and fitness are very important to me. And so I'm always learning, I'm always growing in that area. And so I want to encourage anyone who wants to experience greater healing and wholeness in that area to pursue that. What does that look like for you? So those are some resources for me. My psychiatrist is a gift from God. I call him like part pastor, part psychiatrist, because when I see him, he's this wonderful Christian man, and he just reminds me, you won't need to take this in heaven, and God's going to heal you and redeem you. And one day you won't have to deal with this thorn in your flesh, this burden anymore. And so having voices and people like that in my life, and just friends who have seen me at my worst, and like Kate and others, and love me anyway, has been very healing, and just supportive family. And so I think there's a lot of resources out there that hopefully will help other people.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Allie. Those are so good. And I also want to point people back to if the listeners are interested in another conversation that we had with Kay Warren a couple of years ago, and we'll link to that in our show notes. And she also has a lot of just resources on her website as well, which I believe is just kwarren.com. And she really is a great voice in mental health and mental just awareness about different mental illness.
Absolutely. I will definitely second that. It slipped my mind, but Hope for Mental Health, I think, is their ministry. And so, they tell people stories. I have found so much encouragement from their ministry. So I definitely agree with that as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, Allie, as we're wrapping up today, what would be maybe one piece of encouragement that you would leave our listeners with?
Yeah, I would just say your struggle, like I've said before, your struggle is not your identity. I think it's a song lyric from like an 80s song or something. But I love these words by Brennan Manning, and hopefully I'm going to get them right. Define yourself radically as one beloved by God. Every other identity is an illusion. And so, and just to remember your true identity. You're not a diagnosis. You're not a list of symptoms. You're a whole person dearly loved by God. You belong to God. Your identity is God's beloved, and nothing, no diagnosis, no illness, nothing can take that away from you. And so I need that for myself. And I hope that's encouragement to your listeners as well.
Thank you, Allie. So I love that quote. That is so beautiful. Well, thank you for sharing your story. It is truly just a remarkable story, and it's ultimately a story of God's love. And I think that's what's the most powerful about it, is that you have allowed God to love you in those places. And as a result, you have truly come to a place where you're able to offer your life and your story on behalf of others. And I think that just is such a beautiful redemption story. So thank you, Allie. We love you.
Thank you. And I just want to say thank you both. You are two wholehearted encouragers of women. You're amazing. What you do to encourage women is so beautiful. And I'm a big fan. Thank you so much. I'm just grateful for you both and all that you do and all that the Open Door Sisterhood does.
Thank you, Allie. Well, right back at you on that. We're big fans. All right. Well, have a great day, and we wish you the best with your book.
Thank you.
Bye.